So all of those who are there on camera, those who are, just a moment. Hello everyone, I'm Gajanan, and this session is designed to discuss the strategy for tackling history as the optional. Again, those who are there, welcome all of you. And those who are there online, just try to be there on camera, all of you. Anusha, Aruna, anyone? Anusha, Aruna, Maria. I hope that I'm audible. Put a Y in the chat box. Those who are there live in YouTube chat, no? Just put a hi in the chat box so that I'll come to know that my voice is clear to you. All of you, those who are there live on YouTube, just put a hi in the chat box. Nitish, Sumaya, Sultana, all of you just try to be there on camera. Vaibhav, Chandan, Chandan, Om, Maria, Kavya, all of you just try to be there on camera. Let's make the session very interactive. Let's make the session very interactive. Those who are there online, put a Y in the chat box if I am audible. All of you, those who are there online, just put a Y in the chat box. Okay. So now those who are there live on YouTube chat, it's very good to get responses from you. So we all are part of this interactive session. And first, I would like to invite queries from everyone. Oh, Kavya, Maria, Nitish. I hope that I'm audible. Put a Y in the chat box first. All of you, just put a Y in the chat box if I'm audible. Those who are there, okay. So those who are there live on YouTube, welcome all of you. I'm Gajanan, and this session is basically designed to help you simplify your strategy for preparation for UPSC History Optional. Maria, thank you so much. All of you, those who are there online, just try to be there on camera. It would become still more interactive with all of you if you're there on camera, and certainly all those who are there. So, again, to start with, no, to start with the session, no, if you talk about history optional, no, if you talk about history optional, there are two questions, no, there are two questions that we have to know. First of all, that whether we should go for history as the optional, first question, and second question is that if we go for history as the optional, then the question is how we can prepare for it. No? How we can prepare for it. So there are two questions. First of all, whether we should go for history as the optional, and second question is how to go for preparing for this optional. The first part, no, I would answer later. My part in this session is to help you simplify the process of overall strategy for preparation for UPSC history optional. Then it's up to you. It's your part first to come up with a decision how and why you want to go for this subject, because asking to pick a subject, asking a candidate to pick a subject is just like asking a person to fall in love with someone. No? And don't you think that I should not, and rather I would not do that? No? The decision is always that of candidate. No, the choice is always that of candidate in rouse. What we make the candidate understand that how the subject is good for that candidate and how the candidate should try to approach that. So my part is to let you know what are the good parts of this history as the optional. And second thing, please. And second thing, please, Vidya, seated. Thank you. And second thing, I also have to let you know what are the ways in which we can this overall optional. Correct? So before I start going for my own side, discussing the strategy, any questions from your side? Anything that you want to ask about optional, and those who are live on YouTube, they can also put the queries. I'm taking their queries as well. Rakesh, Gargi, Apurv, all of you, you can put the queries. Any queries from your side? Vast subject. Okay. First question that has come from the offline candidate says that history is a very vast subject. So my question is, is really this a very vast subject, because when you talk about history, most of the candidates, they have got a misperception about it, that history is very vast. Basically, history looks very vast because the syllabus of history is very structured and very well defined. That is why it looks very vast. Overall, what is the calculation that I always tell the candidates? No, what is the calculation that I always tell the candidates? It's very simple. That for GS, no, for GS, anyway, you have to study for 70% part of the history that you have to study for optional. 30% more, no, 30% more debate has to be added. Debate has to be added. No, once you mix 30% more debate, once 30% more debate is added with the overall GS part of history, you are actually prepared for history optional as well. Now, how this is so, I'll try to show you with the help of some questions. Look, in my module, I'm very much used to take the module through questions and answer format, because we are not here to do a PhD in history. The purpose is not that doing a PhD. The purpose is very simple, that once we prepare for history, we should be able to every single question in UPSC exam. That is what we have to do. No? So mostly the module that I take, I always try to base that on question answer module. So here again, to prove this part, that history basically is very, and just covering GS history, adding some more analysis to it, you can reach history optional part. I'll show you a question, no, a very basic question. Before I go for the question, a very basic question. One question that I'll take from those who are live on YouTube. They have asked a question: how to cover history optional for 2014 prelims as well as mains. Rakesh is also asking a question about optional, and Rakesh is also asking a question about history GS prelims plus optional. Why not to start then with one very simple question of this year prelims history, and then I will take the standard of that discussion to the mains of UPSC history optional level, correct? I'll start with a very simple question. Now, see this, try to solve. Just see this and try to solve. Those who are there live, online, they can also put their queries in the chat box. If they're on camera, it's always very easy for me to interact with them, correct? Now, see a question of UPSC 2023, UPSC prelims. This just nearly, just very near. There was UPSC prelims exam. I'm talking about prelims. I'm talking about UPSC pre 2013. Now the exam was there. There was a question that was asked by UPSC. एक सवाल पूछा गया. UPSC ने पूछा, in which one of the following regions was Dhanya Katak, no, which flourished as a prominent Buddhist center, no, Buddhist center under the Mahasanghikas located. No, they're asking about Dhanya Katak. Now, to solve this question, the easiest thing that you will have to figure out, that by talking about Dhanya Katak, basically they are talking about Amaravati. The ancient name of Amaravati was Dhanya Katak. Is that simple thing? A basic information that we should have? No? Again, when you talk about Amaravati, Amaravati is in Andhra area. No? And when you talk about Amaravati, what is the most basic information that you have in GS? First, I'm talking about the GS level history, and then I'll carry that. Then I'll carry that to optional level history. What is the difference? You will have to figure out. No, what is the difference? You will have to figure out. अब एक बात देखिए, when you talk about Amaravati, कब पढ़ा? You talked about three forms of arts. आपने बात की three forms of art. आपने बोला गांधारा art. No, you all know about Gandhara art. Then you say Mathura art. Then you say Amravati art. Three forms of art, and more on with Buddhist type of sculpture and other things. This is what we know. अब एक और छोटी बात बताइए. When did you study about these three forms of arts? You talk about these three forms of arts in post-Mauryan time. post-Mauryan age. The three forms of art became very prominent. No? And when you talk about the post-Mauryan time, don't you think that you know that Amaravati, no, Amaravati became such a prominent center in times of Satavahanas in South India. The first power to make one empire, they were the Satavahanas. Basic thing in GS history, we all know that. So in times of Satavahanas, Amaravati emerged as a very powerful center. And this was also the time the Amaravati art, Buddhist art also flourished. So basically, Amaravati in Andhra area was a very famous Buddhist center. It was a very famous Buddhist center. And the ancient name of Amaravati was also something that was called Danya Katak. Danya Kataka. Now, that is what the question that has been asked by UPSC. UPSC ने क्या सवाल पूछा this year prelims, that you had to talk about Dhanya Katak, no? And Dhanya Katak, that was a famous Buddhist center, no? Which region it was located? The answer is very simple now. It was Andhra. Now, this is GS history question prelims. This year UPSC asked this question. Simple. This much you have to know for GS. And everybody would appear for prelims. Prelims के लिए तो appear होंगे. Online candidates, those who are there live on YouTube, put a Y in the chat box if you agree that you will know this much of history, at least for GS. इतनी बात तो आपको जरूर पढ़नी पड़ेगी. Now see a question of history optional. Now this is a question from history optional mains. This is a question from history optional mains. History optional mains 2022, a map question. This was there. क्या पूछा उन्होंने? The earliest Satvahana capital. No, you had to align this with the 10th place. No, where is the 10th place? This is the 10th place. No, now this is the Andhra region, and this 10th place basically is Amaravati. Amaravati. Just now we discussed. It was also called Dhanya Katak. And don't you think that it was a famous Buddhist center that flourished in times of Satavahanas? Now, that is what the question that was asked by UPSC in mains. History optional last year. Two things we have to derive. Is this not a very similar layer of GS? Is this not a very similar level of GS history that we already have to study? Just know something more and you would be able to answer the optional questions very easily. It's that simple. GS में history तो पढ़नी ही है. If you just know something more about history, it's so easy to answer the questions in history optional paper. First thing. Second thing, that you should know that now the pattern of UPSC has changed. There is a misconcept. No, there is a misconcept among the candidates that the map questions would be very difficult. The map questions are super easy questions because now you do not have to plot the sites on the map. The sites are already plotted. Given by UPSC exam, the sites are already plotted. Then you just have to describe about those sites. And when this is true, it's super easy. You just have to write about 30 words around about Amaravati in this question. Super easy. That is why I always say that for GS, this much anyway have to be studied. If you just put some more knowledge, you're 200% prepared for history optional as well. Correct? Online candidates, any questions you have, put that in chat box. I'll take something more. But before that, no, before that, don't you think that this question of history about Amravati was asked in 2022? No, this question of history optional map work about Amravati was asked in 2022. No, all and about it. This question about Amravati or Dhanyakatak that was asked by UPSC in 2023 pre. Don't you think that even UPSC GS part is taking a clue from history optional? And rather, when you prepare for history optional, it becomes rather super easy to face your GS paper, correct? The first point that I wanted to discuss with you. Again, I'll discuss the second point as well, second thing that I want to discuss from my side. But before that, again, some questions from your side. Put a question. Yes, any other question that you have? One student in offline is asking that, and yes, those were there live on YouTube, Gargi, Om, Rakesh, and Nico, all of you can put your queries there. All of you, Himanshu, all of you can put your queries. All of you, just keep on putting your queries. I'm tackling all of them. One question what that was asked that has been asked by one offline candidate here is that how effective is history and how helpful it is in tackling other subjects. No subject is without a background. No subject is without a background. In fact, you can say that entire entire UPSC syllabus, entire UPSC syllabus can be divided into two parts: contemporary India and contemporary world. No, for contemporary India, the the contemporary India, the background would come from modern history part and ancient, medieval, and culture like part. And for the contemporary world, the background would come from the world history. So basically, in our syllabus, it becomes easy to tackle once you have a background knowledge of different aspects, different subjects. Now, one question that has been there in online, that one student says that how can I start preparing for history optional from online? Fazil, Fazil, Shaukat. Good question. How to start preparing for history optional? First thing, that whenever you go for history optional, your task is very simple. Be careful about the basics, no? Very basic details. For example, if you talk about ancient India, suppose you read R.S. Sharma book, suppose you read Romila Thapar book, suppose you read any other book. Then in ancient India, first the Aryans, suppose when they came to India just like a tribe. So they were like Jana, no? Gradually, they started getting settled, and there was a transition towards Jana to Janapad. No? Settled. They started emerging like states, and gradually the states became very powerful, and they became Mahajanpad. Like Magadha emerged as a Mahajanpad. No? And eventually Mahajanpada got converted into empire. So, like Magadhan Empire was there in times of Ashoka. If we talk about this, in ancient India, there is a transition from Jana Janapad, Mahajanapad to empire stage. When you are very good in basics, basically, then it becomes very easy for you to figure out this transition. And that is why when you have to start preparing for history, the first task is that you should be very careful about the basic details. In module, when we are discussing the history, my task would be first to make you clear with every single basic detail, no, basic concepts, and then to help you understand a permutation and combination of those basic points so that you could use that permutation and combination to answer almost any question in UPSC mains. This is how we will proceed in the module. Now I'll take a question from those who are there live in YouTube chat. So, do we need to quote historiography in world history section? First of all, if you talk about the history optional part, no, if you talk about history optional part, two papers. And when you talk about the two papers, paper one and paper two, no, paper one would have ancient and medieval as two parts. Paper two would have modern history and world history as two parts. World history part is easiest to tackle because the problem of historiography is very less. No, maximum historiographic interpretation would be there in ancient part. No, least historiographic interpretation would be in world history part. So basically, world history part becomes the most scoring section. No, most scoring section, and certainly then it would be easiest to tackle. Again, those who are live on YouTube, they can put more queries there. I'll try to tackle that. Offline candidates, any questions you have? Any question that you have? Any other question? Those who are online, they can put their query in the chat. Those who are there online, they can put their query in the chat. Any query you have? Okay. Yes. Now, again, a candidate from offline is asking that what is the weightage that history would have, no, in helping you in understand other subjects, the GS subjects and other subjects, correct? Just try to understand. I'll give you some examples, correct? Here I'll give you some examples. First of all, first of all, think about it. Suppose you talk about polity, no? Suppose you talk about polity as one example. And suppose in polity you talk about constitutional development. Can you write about constitutional development without knowing about the historic background? No, it's very difficult. No, it's very difficult. No, to answer the constitutional development questions without knowing about the historic background. Unless you understand how the character of the East India Company was changing here in India. The East India Company came to India as a trader, but very soon the East India Company started becoming one administrator. Unless you understand this transformation of the East India Company and how the British parliamentary politics were changing it. No, certainly the British parliamentary politics were changing it. Look, parliamentary politics can always be influenced by money, and the East India Company was having huge resources of India at its disposal. Don't you think that with these huge resources of India, the East India Company was completely in a position to influence the British parliamentary politics? No, the East India Company got huge resources in India, and with these resources, the company was completely in a position to change the British parliamentary politics. Don't you think that if the British Parliament would have not started controlling the company, the East India Company would have started controlling the British Parliament? And don't you think that before that would happen, the Parliament would have to control the East India Company? That is how the constitutional development started in India. So, unless you have the historic background, it's very difficult even to understand the constitutional development like thing. I'm just giving you one example of one subject like polity. No? Think about, no? Think about economy now, no? And you talk about development of planning, planned economy in India. Unless you know about the fight that was there in times of British for the economic equality and the political equality, the socialist type of mindset that Jawaharlal Nehru and Subhash Chandra Bose like leaders they had, the influence of Russian Revolution on Indian national movement, it's very difficult to trace the background of planning like economy, no, planned economy in India. No, think about the subject like you talk about social issues. No, don't you think that unless you know about the historic background, how the position of women deteriorated in India, how the position of depressed classes deteriorated in India, it's nearly impossible to talk about how to reverse this problem. There's a history. अच्छा बहुत मजेदार सी बात, those who are from history background, no, those who are the live candidates on YouTube. I'm tackling your query, but first put a Y in the chat box if you agree with me. Correct? Put a Y in the chat box if you agree with me. Don't you think that ancient was a concept of something that was called Dvija? No, there was a concept of something that was called Dvija. What was Dvija? Twice born. No? Who were the Dvijas? The Brahmins, no, the Kshatriyas, and the Vaishyas. They were considered Dvija. No, who were not included into Dvija? The Shudra. The Shudra were not included into Dvija, and the women, they were not included into Dvija. So they were not included into Dvija. Brahmin, Kshatriya, and Vaishya, they were included into Dvija. So if this is so, if you agree with this, don't you think that only the Dvija, they got the right to go for the Vedic education? Because they were entitled to go for sacred thread ceremony, correct? So once they were entitled to go for sacred thread ceremony, don't you think that only they would go for Vedic education? And when this was there, the Shudra and the women, they would not be allowed to go for Vedic education. They would not be considered Dvija. and they would not be allowed to go for the education at all, because that time the only education was Vedic education. So I want opinion from you in the chat box, those who are online and those who are there live on YouTube, as well as the offline candidates. Don't you think that if you want to keep some sections of society always suppressed, there is a very simple trick: cut the roots of thinking. And what is the root of thinking? Education. Don't you think that this type of system would be much more biased in favor of the classes like Brahmins, Kshatriyas, and the Vaishyas, and the Shudra and the women? They would be completely put at disadvantage. No, this is so. Don't you think that if we talk about one of the factors, how their position in society has deteriorated, education would be one of the factors. I'm just talking about one of the factors, Fazil. No? Am I clear? All those who are there on camera, it is always much better. It's always much more interactive with those candidates. Online candidates, just try to be there on camera. Don't you think that when you talk about just one of the factors, no, certainly it's very simple to understand that unless we understand the historic forces, how their position has deteriorated, it's very difficult to uplift the sections like the depressed class, like you talk about women empowerment, certainly for social issues, for equality, for economy, for everything. History is the root. Without history, there is no subject. No? Now, I'll tackle one query from Garg. Sir, if I opt for your classes and submit answer every day, will my answers be checked every day? Second, so one Gargi is asking a question answer, question answer. Gargi and those who are there, just just want to give you one idea how the question answer format would be there, no, how the question answer format would be there. Generally how I go, that first I'll discuss some concepts with you in the class, no, I'll discuss some concepts with you in the class every week, and just at the end of the week there would be a test. There would be a test, subjective questions and answers, they would be there. There would be a test. Mains, UPSC mains optional level test would be there. then i would ask you then I would ask you whether you are offline or online. The same requirement is there, that appear for writing the question like a test, no? Suppose if I ask you to write when you're there home and then you come up with your answer, इससे सिर्फ आपकी हैंडराइटिंग इंप्रूव होगी और फायदा कुछ भी नहीं होगा, because you would be writing my notes and submitting it back to me, and to deduct marks in my own notes, it's very painful task. And Gargi, I don't want that. That is why you will have to, and all of you will have to write the test appearing in the test time, whether online or offline. And then I'll discuss the questions one on one. What are the problems? Suppose you write a question, no? Suppose you write any answer there. And suppose if I say that you will be given 6 out of 10 or 5 out of 10, that is not a big thing. The question is why you are getting 5 and why you are getting 6. What are the strengths and weaknesses of your answers, no? What should be introduction, what should be conclusion, what can be a general structure of that question? This is what we have to decide. And if this is so, that can only be discussed one on one. Even I write the remarks, no, even if I write the remarks, it's not that easy to interpret that when you're not there with me. So I would like you to interact with me a lot in my classes and in every class that is there for you. Basically it's all about interaction. It's not that the teacher comes, teaches and goes. Basically we together synthesize, no, a knowledge that can be used, no, that can be used in exam. That is what we have to do. Now I'll tackle one question from those who are online, correct, those who are online. Ramya is asking, how can I make the notes of history related to dynasties which ruled over India? Now, my question is, Ramya, correct? Ramya, it's a very good question. Just try to understand. And look, those who are online, offline, and those who are live, I'm taking your queries as well. Om and others, keep on putting your queries. But I would like more queries. ये queries तो हैं अच्छी, पर और क्वेरीज चाहिए और थोड़ी और खतरनाक वाले क्वेश्चन आए तो और अच्छी बात होगी, नो, थोड़ी और इंटरेक्शन. I'll just take one, Ramya's query, and then I'll come to you. Ramya is asking about dynasties, no? And Ramya is asking about the note making out of that. Ramya, a simple thing that you should know, a simple thing that you should know that when you talk about history, you do not talk just about political aspect. Polity is invariably connected with economy. What type of polity and what type of economy is there, that type of society and that type of culture is there. Is this not? So, dynasties, political history is just part of that history of that age, correct? So, we have to know about the dynasties, but how the overall development of culture, society, and economy was there, that has to be connected with it. Don't you think that in Ashokan time, the development in cultural field would be impacted by his Buddhist ideology as well? No? So, society, economy, religion, polity, everything was connected. So, we will discuss about different aspects like polity, dynasty, all the dynasties, but we'll keep on interlinking all the things, polity with economy, economy with society, society with religion, and everything would be interconnected with each other. That is how we have to tackle. More than that, when you are there in the class, Ramya and everyone, you don't have to worry about the dynastic charts and the things like that, because every single detail I would be discussing about that in the class itself. So we have to go to the UPSC level. But many of you might have started your journey maybe from a different background, maybe commerce, maybe engineering, maybe some other backgrounds, maybe management. Don't worry, I will always start with the scratch. No? And then I'll go to the UPSC level. So every basic thing would be discussed in the class. आपका काम बहुत सिंपल है राम्या, और आप सबके लिए आपको बस रोज क्लास आना है. You just have to come daily to the class. What I dictate in the class, go back home, try to understand it again, and just try to retain that. Just try to use the permutation and combination. You would be able to answer every single question there in exam. That is what we have to do. No? And I'll tackle one more query. Offline candidates now. Yes. Any other query? Just now I discussed that. Just now I discussed that. Any other query? Any other thing that you want to ask? So Ishika is asking a question. So do we need to quote historians in different answers? That is a question. Historians, no? First of all, no. First of all, if you talk about some of them very prominent in giving some views, they're very prominent. For example, suppose you talk about decline of IBC, and suppose you talk about a historian, Nakar is there. Serene Nakar would say that basically IVC declined because the trade link with Mesopotamia also declined. So when the trade with Mesopotamia declined, then certainly you will find that the IVC overall economy also declined. Many historians refute that, but this is a major view that has been given by Serene Ratnakar. Now, suppose you talk about some other historians, like one of the reasons why IVC declined. Then Mortimer Wheeler, another great historian, would say that maybe it was the Aryan invasion that led to decline of IVC. No? Suppose when you talk about some of the names of the historians, correct? Some of the names of the historians, they would come very naturally. No, they would come very naturally. They are very few, they are very selected, they would come very naturally. And in every place, no, out of hundreds of the historians, out of them, whatever is needed for the exam, no, some few of the historians, very important historians, and their views, certainly I'll discuss with you, no, in a very simple way. It would become very natural for you when you start discussing that opinion of that historian, the name would automatically come to you. अच्छा, एक और मजेदार सी बात देखिए. Suppose if I say, no, suppose if I say that if you talk about Mortimer Wheeler, Mortimer Wheeler said that it was the Aryan invasion that led to decline of IVC. No? Now, the IVC, when talk about Indus Valley civilization, is divided into three phases. तीन फेज में डिवाइड करते हैं. अर्ली हड़प्पन फेज, मैच्योर हड़प्पन फेज, and late Harappan phase. Different historians would give different timelines for Upinder Singh, that's optional. So Upinder Singh would say early Harappan phase. Start early Harappan phase 3200 BC to 2600 BC. Mature Harappan phase, when Harappan features all of them were available, they would be called mature Harappan phase. Like urbanization, writing, weights, measures, everything was available. That was something that was called mature Harappan phase. The time period given by Upinder Singh would be 2600 to 1900 BC. And then came the decline of IBC, no? Late Harappan phase, when IBC started declining. And the time period was 1900 BC to 1300 BC. That was the time the late Harappan phase was there. Now, most of the historians would agree that the Rig Vedic time period, what was the Rig Vedic time period? The early Vedic time period was 1500 to 1000 BC. Was 1500 to 1000 BC. So this was the early Vedic, Rig Vedic time period. This was the time the Aryans had already started moving towards India. इतनी बात तो हमें पता है. अब एक बात बताइए, Mortimer Wheeler, if I say, said that it was the Aryan invasion because of which IBC declined. That is what he says. But think about it. The Indus Valley civilization was already on decline from 1900 BC. No? And the Aryans started coming to India from 1500 BC. So there is a gap of 400 years. No? There's a gap of 400 years. Much before, 400 years before the Aryans came to India, IVC was already on decline. Don't you think that Wheeler's theory cannot be accepted? No? Now, my question is, if I say that the Aryan invasion theory is given by Mortimer Wheeler, and this is how the Aryan invasion theory is refuted. This is just one aspect of decline of IVC. Don't you think that it's nothing very difficult? This is very, very simple to understand. And just now, in discussing this Aryan invasion theory, 6 times, 5 times, I have already discussed about the name Mortimer Wheeler. Don't you think that it's very, very easy now to retain the names? Correct? क्योंकि 5 बार मैंने एक ही बात करी, व्हीलर की बात की. Everything would become very simple. One historian is important. Maybe dozens of times the same name would come to you. It would become automatic to you. So a simple thing is there in history. Just be careful about the concepts and the details. Everything would naturally be there with you. Do not try to mug up. मैं फिर से एक ही बात बताऊंगा जो मैंने आपको पिछले बार भी बताई थी. जिंदगी के बहुत सिंपल से रूल हैं. जो भी जिंदा हुआ है वो मर जाएगा. जो भी याद करेंगे वो भूल जाएंगे. और जिसको भी भुलाना चाहेंगे उसे कभी भुला नहीं पाएंगे. Oh? So the task is very simple. Do not try to mug up. Just try to read very carefully. No? I will try to take one question. I have taken one question of map from 2022. I'll try to take one question of UPSC history mains from 2021 just to let you have one idea how to approach a question in the exam. Look, rather than discussing the theory, no, rather than discussing the theory, I'm taking here the practical things because that would make it very easy for you to exactly understand the standard of the exam. मैंने आपको फिर बताया, फिर से शुरुआत में ही आपको बताया कि देखिए, व्हेन यू टॉक अबाउट हिस्ट्री ऑप्शनल, दो ही बात होती है. एक सवाल होता है कि आप हिस्ट्री ऑप्शनल चूज करें या ना करें, वेदर टू गो फॉर हिस्ट्री ऑप्शनल और नॉट. दूसरा सवाल ये होता है कि अगर आपको हिस्ट्री ऑप्शनल चाहिए, हाउ टू प्रिपेयर फॉर इट. माई टास्क इज ऑलवेज टू लेट यू नो हाउ टू प्रिपेयर फॉर इट. Because asking you to pick a subject is asking you like to fall in love with someone. It's not my part. No, that would be highly unnatural. I know that history is such a good subject that automatically a candidate would fall in love with the subject. No, but that should be natural. That should be natural. That should come from you to the subject. No, my part is to break the subject in such a way so that it would become very easy for you to tackle. So I'll tackle this question of UPSC. ध्यान से देखिए इसे. But before that, one question from those who are there on YouTube. So Ishika is asking a question that do we need to read all the NCRTs, R.S. Sharma and Upender Singh for ancient India? And if this is so, how we will cover all the subject? सो इशिका गार्गी, ऐसा क्यों लग रहा है कि जो लाइव है उसमें 3 बच्चे बाकी बच्चों से ज़्यादा एक्टिव हैं क्योंकि ज़्यादा सवाल उनके आ रहे हैं? क्या बाकी लोग हार मान लेना चाहते हैं? I would like all of you to put questions. All of you to put questions. First of all, Ishika, this is a very good question, no? This is a very good question. Again, second thing that you should know. Suppose you talk about ancient India. अब मैं फिर से बताता हूँ. Let's talk about some of the sources, correct? Let's talk about some of the sources. Like suppose if you talk about ancient India, no, ancient India, what are the good books for ancient India? Upinder Singh is a very good book. No, Upinder Singh, just a moment. Suppose Upinder Singh is a very good book, then don't you think that Romila Thapar is a very good book? No, R.S. Sharma is also a very good book. R.S. Sharma. Then you talk about D.N. Jha is a very good book. Then D.D. Kosambi is a very good book. D.D. Kosambi is a very good book. All these are very good books. I'm talking about very good books. There are so many other books as well. I'm talking about the best books so far. Don't you think that even if you start reading these 5 books for ancient India, you need 6 months? No? Just forget about all the books. One offline candidate is saying that even Upinder Singh would take months to read. And truly it is. That is why I told you that do not worry because you are not here to do a PhD in history. Your task is simple that you have to study in such a way that you should be able to solve all the questions of your UPSC. That is the purpose. Your task is for every subject. Suppose you're talking about ancient, no? For every subject, anything that is important in any of the book, I'll discuss that in the class, I'll dictate. Is that simple, no? Suppose you talk about the economic history, Romila Thapar, R.S. Sharma, no, D.D. Kosambi, they've all given very good economic part of history, no? Then you talk about revisionist type of history, a different type of history. Upender Singh has given very good version of revisionist type of history. Anything that is the strength of that book, no, that is particularly very good that in that book, all the good concepts. I'll discuss that in class. I'll dictate your task is very simple कि घर जाके उसे 2 बार पढ़ लीजिए. Whatever I'll dictate in the class, you just go home, read it twice, and you would be able to answer every question. Every week, once we go for finishing almost a chapter, then I'll give you some questions, and you have to come in class either offline or online, and you should try to write that in test type of scenario, and then I'll try to discuss that answer with you one on one. Is that simple journey? And 5 to 6 months, no, 5 to 6 months, we would be able to cover every single good book for all the parts. Forget about just ancient, medieval, culture, everything. Ancient, medieval, modern world, every part. We'll discuss everything. Your task is very simple, just to be regular in the class and just be attentive with what we are discussing here in the class. That's all. More questions from offline candidates. I'll take online candidates as well. Those who are online, their questions. So those who are there online, ask the questions. Put that in chat box. I'm just ready to take some more questions. Online candidates, offline candidates. Any questions? Those who are live on YouTube. I'll go for that. Now, one student in YouTube live is asking that is IGNU material a good material? Yes, IGNU is a very good material. But my question is, suppose if they are preparing the material, how they would be preparing the material? By referring to the books that we have discussed, like Upender Singh, right, Romila Thapar, and everything, and that is designed for graduation like thing, or maybe post graduation like thing, not designed exactly for UPSC. So even IGNU booklets, and even from all these booklets that we have discussed, anything that is good for UPSC exam, we'll discuss that in the class itself. I'll dictate you. Your task is very simple again. Just go and revise that. That's all. Okay? Now, before I start tackling more questions from all of you, now one question from my side, करेक्ट? अब मेरी तरफ से मन की बात में एक सवाल सॉल्व कर लेते हैं. A question from history optional 2021. Ishika is asking about the map question, correct? Ishika, live. Those who are there live, they're asking questions. So Ishika is asking about map question. Ishika, in the start itself, this session I have discussed about the maps. Just go through that part again, you will figure out. Not only this, in previous so many sessions of YouTube, Rouse channel, you can find so many videos are there that I have uploaded. You'll find that in all of that, I have discussed so many map questions. Please try to tackle that. Just try to see that. Again, I'll come to that, but before that, the question I want to discuss with you. The question was asked by UPSC in history, optional 2021. 2022, we took one question. Now 2021, I'm taking one question. See the question. Look, generally, the candidates, they have a big misconcept that when they would mark up a lot many facts, they would be able to clear history optional paper. As a trainer of this subject, no, as a trainer, I would always use a word like trainer or if you are really those candidate who would come to top 100, it's very difficult to teach. No, need a coach. Even Tendulkar needed a coach. Even Roger Federer needed a coach. But certainly, Tendulkar and Federer, they cannot be taught, they can be coached. So I'm just here to coach you. But when talk about this, when as a coach, when I see this subject, they always tell you one thing: do not mug up at all. Just try to understand the concepts. If you are very sound in concepts, you can answer every single question in UPSC history optional paper with a very, very basic knowledge. Just see this question. The question says that अब ध्यान से देखिए and figure out the keywords. How to figure out the keywords? उन्होंने बोला the political. One keyword. ध्यान से देखिए. All those there who are live, online, offline candidate, just find out the keywords. उन्होंने बोला the political and the economic. No, the political and the economic needs of the rulers. उन्होंने बोला needs of the rulers. Third keyword. Combined with. You have to combine that with the economic and the status, the economic and the status needs of the merchant class, needs of the merchant class together, together provided the receptive cultural milieu in which Buddhism flourished. No? The question tag here is comment. The question tag here is comment. Now, this is asking that the rulers, their political and economic needs. No? Then the question is asking the merchant class, their economic and status needs. All this combined together and created the condition for the rise of Buddhism. You have to comment. So, what is comment? Comment is here the question tag. And this comment question, what you have to do? You have to give one opinion. You have to give one opinion. So, what is comment? You have to comment upon, suppose a big commentator is doing a commentary on batting of maybe Virat Kohli. So he would be giving his own opinion. Just like that, when the question tag is comment, you have to give your own opinion. The catch here, no, the trick here is to understand that your opinion can be same as that of R.S. Sharma and Romila Thapar. अगर रोमिला थापर और R.S. शर्मा आपकी तरह सोचते हैं तो ये उनकी प्रॉब्लम है, आपकी नहीं. That is the trick. The trick is very simple. To understand that you're not going to be a historian, you're going to be a state. You just have to write standard opinion. And then you have to give those opinions in right place. This is what you have to do. काम बस इतना ही है. अब देखिए how to solve this question. Retain the keywords and see the question. First of all, the question is asking about the rulers. No? Class. Talking about the merchants, traders. So rulers and traders. दो बातें कही उन्होंने. Then if you talk about the rulers and the traders, correct? If you talk about the rulers and the traders, the rulers, what they said, economic, no, and political. Economic and political need, traders. What they say, the status. Status and economic needs. They said that this is how there was a condition for rise of Buddhism. और फिर से समझिए इसे. If you talk about rulers, You talk about economic and political need. Just think about it. Chaturvarna system. Chaturvarna system. What was that? Brahmins, no? Kshatriyas, Vaishya, and Shudra. Don't you think that Brahmin was the priestly class? No? Kshatriya, they were the ruling class. So basically, you have to connect here with the need of Kshatriya class. No? Vaishya, they were the merchant class. Shudra, they gave the services. That is what was described in the Dharma Sutras in the Shastras. Think about it. The Brahmins and the Kshatriyas, they combined. No, the priestly and the ruling class, they always combined together, and that dominated all the other sections of society. No, that is what R.S. Sharma and Romila Thapar would say. But don't you think that they would combine there to dictate or to dominate all the other sections of society? But within them, there would be inherent contradiction. Kshatriyas, they were the rulers, but they were given a secondary position compared to the Brahmins. And don't you think that they would also look for a better situation? They would look for the primary position. Don't you think that if this is so, there would be a Varna conflict, inherent conflict between the Brahmin and Kshatriya class as well? And if this is so, don't you think that Buddha, when you talk about Buddha, आपने बोला बुद्धा, आपने बोला महावीरा, don't you think that both of them they belong to the Kshatriya family? Both of them they belong to the Kshatriya family. Can you not see the rise of Buddhism also as a Kshatriya reaction? There was political reason. No, there was Varna inherent contradiction. Second, if you talk about the ruling class and you talk about the economic region, अब इसे कैसे रिलेट करेंगे? एक बहुत मजेदार सी बात है. You all know about Ashoka. अब अशोका के बारे में तो पता ही होगा. No? And Ashoka would come up with Dhamma. Think about Dhamma of Ashoka. It would support Buddhism. No? And what it would not support? The Brahmanical rituals. The Brahmanical rituals would not be supported by Dhamma because Ashoka's Dhamma was much inspired by Buddhist ideology. Don't you think that if useless rituals would not be there, that is what would be believed by Ashoka, don't you think that it would save so much of cattle wealth? And don't you think that if this would save cattle wealth, it would improve agriculture and economy? More agriculture, more economy, more taxation would be there. Better would be the position of state. Was it not economic need of the ruling class? Ashoka was a big supporter of Buddhism. That was supporting rise of Buddhism. Is this not? Now, that was the first angle that we had to discuss, the ruling class. Is it not simple? You are there online on YouTube. If you understand the concept, then put a Y in the chat box. Second angle of the question that we have to discuss. Second angle, the trading class. Who were the trading class? The Vaishya. They were the main trading class. No? अब एक बहुत मजेदार सी बात समझिए. जब आप बोलते हैं द एज ऑफ बुद्धा, बेसिकली यू टॉक अबाउट द एज ऑफ महाजनपदा. बेसिकली यू टॉक अबाउट द एज ऑफ महाजनपदा. तो जब आपने एज ऑफ महाजनपदा, डोंट यू थिंक दैट, think about one Mahajanpada that I'll take for example, Magadha. Age of Buddhism was the age of Mahajanpada. Magad was a Mahajanpad. Is this not? Where is Magad? Bihar area? East? In east. There would be very good soil. No? There would be very good rain. And there would be very good use of iron. Don't you think that agriculture would become very good? No? Surplus agriculture. Will it not support? Surplus would always be invested into trade. Don't you think that the trading class was now very powerful because the trade was excellent? No? When the trade was excellent, don't you think that the trading class was very powerful? No? The trading class would become very powerful. For the first time, in the age of Mahajanpada, there was use of coins. No? The first coins which were used in India, they were the punch mark coin. No? Why they were called punch mark coin? Because they were cut pieces of metal and the symbols were on them. That is why they were called the punch mark coin. The first coins which were used, they were the punch mark coin. trade was good, the money economy was flourishing. Don't you think the trading class was becoming very powerful? No? But don't you think that now the trading class was very powerful, but their status in Varna system was third position? Don't you think that they would look for a better status in the Varna system? And if this is so, don't you think that they would support the new religions like Buddhism and Jainism? Buddhist, and the Jainis, they're big traders basically. No? Then you talk about the economic need of the trading class. Don't you think that the old religions like Brahmanical religion said that profiteering is sin? Profiteering is sin. No? If profiteering would not be allowed by Brahmanical religion, don't you think that without profit there is no trade? The new religions like Buddhism and Jainism, they were not critical of profiteering. Don't you think that the new religions like Buddhism would be supported by the traders like the Vaishya? So don't you think that it was the need of the ruling and the trading class which created the conditions for the rise of the new religions like Buddhism and Jainism? Correct? So when you write this answer, no, when you write this answer, first of all, you will have to figure out that you have just answered here 75% of the question. अभी भी पूरा नहीं हुआ ये? And क्यों पूरा नहीं हुआ? Why it has not been complete still? Just try to understand. The question tag was comment. The question tag was comment. No? So, suppose you are Romila Thapar and suppose you are R.S. Sharma. No? In your opinion, the traders, no? The traders and the rulers, no? Certainly they created the conditions for the rise of Buddhism. There is no doubt about this. But don't you think that, in your opinion, certainly there were so many other factors as well? Other factors as well? No? Think about it. Other factors. And suppose you talk about general people. Who were the general people? The women? No? You talk about the Shudras? Think about the Brahmanica system. Was it not giving not a good status to the women and Shudra-like classes? Buddhism and Jainism would give them far more fair position to the women and the Shudras. No? Don't you think that the general people, they were so much fed up with the growing rituals? No? In Brahmanical system, think about Buddhism. No? It would talk about no ritual, very simple religion, very simple philosophy. Think about Mahavira and Buddha. No? Buddha in Buddhism would use the language of the general people. Don't you think that it would attract so many? What the language of the general people would attract so many people toward the ideology. Think about the region of Magadha. Magadha was only recently Aryanized. No? If this is so, the Aryan culture was not that strong. No? And if the Aryan culture recently Magadha was Aryanized, and if this is so, don't you think that the Aryan culture was not that strong, and certainly that would create a condition for rise of new religions like Buddhism? It would be easy to grow there in the region like Magadha. So certainly the statement of the question was correct that the traders and the rulers, they created the conditions for rise of Buddhism. But certainly we also have to agree that, in opinion, we also have to agree that there were some other factors as well. Now that would complete the question. No? First, be careful about the question tags. No? The question tag would change the entire essence of the question. Correct? Second thing is that be careful about the keywords, and then it's very super easy to answer the questions of UPSC. Now, my question is that if you talk about such questions, how many facts I'm talking about? And let me know those who are there live on YouTube, those who are there live here, online as well, and offline. What is it that I have discussed here with you that you would not retain even without revising after even 2 years? एक बात मुझे बताइए, जो बात अभी मैंने आपसे डिस्कस की, क्या आप इसे भूल सकते हैं? Forget about, क्या आप इसे याद रख सकते हैं? I'm not asking that whether you would be able to retain it or not. I'm asking it, can you even forget it? It's that simple. That is what you have to do in history optional. Don't you think that it's super easy to tackle history optional questions. It's very easy. No, it's one of the easiest subject. History is a natural subject. No, basically, and it should be tackled very naturally. Super easy, supernatural a subject. Then now the queries again, correct? Those who are there on YouTube live, they are very active. Apur, Ishika, always very active. Ayushi, Gargi, all of you. Rakesh, and all of you, all the others. Put more queries in the chat box. Those who are there on live YouTube, chat, online, put the queries in the chat. Offline candidates, any other queries you have? किसी को और कोई सवाल पूछना है? All those who are there in YouTube, live chat, any other query that you want to ask? Next question that has been asked by one offline candidate is that how to write within the time period, no, the time limit that has been given in the exam. Look, there's a progressive thing you have to go for. There's a progressive approach that you have to go for. First of all, when you write one question, when you're writing a question, do not worry about the time first, because you have just started writing the question. In your practice session, there would be more time that would be given to you to write one answer. Maybe you can take half an hour to write one answer. But the first task is to know how to structure the question, no? How to structure the question and what are the dimensions that you have to include there. What are the dimensions you don't have to include there. Gradually, no? Gradually, more and more time limit tests would be given to you. That would help you develop the speed. No? That would help you develop the speed. But it would be a gradual process when you move towards it. So when you appear for maybe 10 tests with time limit, the time invariably there is there with you, correct? Time is not a problem. But the first practice, when you start writing the answer, the first priority should be to develop the content and the structure. Time is a second priority. When you start appearing for the test, the time management would also be there. So don't worry. Second thing, when you're writing an exam and you are constrained with the time, you have to answer all the question. It's very simple. Do not keep writing the facts. UPSC ने सवाल पूछा, फर्ज करिए they asked the question, what was contribution of Gandhi ji towards Indian national movement? Don't you think that you can do a PhD in Gandhian philosophy? No? In 200, 250 words, like thing, you cannot even write all the facts. You don't have to. No? The basic thing should be there. Think about Gandhiji. It was just Gandhiji and it was just the Champaran Satyagraha that converted national movement into a true mass movement by connecting the peasantry with national movement. Peasantry was the biggest section of society. So unless peasantry was part of the national movement would have never been completely a mass movement. That was contribution of Gandhiji and contribution of Champaran Satyagraha. UPSC asked the question, very simple question, that it was Champaran of Bihar that made Gandhi Mahatma. No, it was Champaran of Bihar that made Gandhi Mahatma. Truly, that was the case. It was Champaran Satyagraha that made Gandhiji Mahatma, and basically, it was Mahatma Gandhi who converted Indian national movement into a true mass movement by connecting the peasantry with national movement. A very simple, conceptual, a very coherent flow of answers should be there in writing. It would always be within the time limit. It would always be within the time limit. Write conceptual, not factual. No? Then one question from those who are live on YouTube. Sir, can we use diagram in answer writing in history optional? Look, first of all, you talk about diagram. Suppose you talk about the diagrams. Certainly, when you talk about diagrams, no, suppose you talk about some diagrams like a structure, and suppose you talk about the diagram like a structures, how to use diagrams and the things like this. Think about it. Think about it. Suppose you talk about the extent of IBC, extent of Indus Valley civilization. The uppermost, the northernmost site was Manda in Jammu Kashmir. No, the easternmost site was Alamgirpur in UP, in Pur of UP. That is the easternmost site. Then the westernmost side of IVC, the westernmost side of IVC was there in Sutka Gendor. Sutka Gendor. Where is Sutka Gendor? It is in Pakistan. No? And the southernmost side. Some of the books would say Daimabad. Some of the books would say Malwan in Gujarat. Correct? Malwan. I'm taking here Upinder Singh. Malwan in Gujarat would be considered the southernmost site extent of IVC. Now, when you use this type of a sketch, no, it is always handy in writing the answer. It is not taking too much of time because the structure is very simple and it is assisting you into your writing. Do not use a diagram that is repetitive information, correct? Do not use a diagram that is consuming your time, correct? Because then you will run out of time. Then the diagram has to be simple. It should be clear. It should be simple. It should save words and time for you. It should make it easier for the examiner to understand. Certainly, that type of diagram we can certainly use. No, certainly when you talk about the like you talk about the Cholas, the Cheras, and the Pandyas. No, and certainly when you try to start talking about them through the South Indian map, certainly a very rough diagram, even a very rough diagram will do. But certainly that would make look the answer more attractive, more systematic. But do not use a diagram that is consuming the word. That is not needed. Correct? Then any other question? Those who are there live, any other question? Online. Any other question? Offline candidates. Any other question? एक बच्चे ने बहुत अच्छा सवाल पूछा कि इंग्लिश कितनी लिखें? क्या बहुत खतरनाक इंग्लिश लिखें या बहुत सिंपल से इंग्लिश लिखें? नो, दैट इज़ द क्वेश्चन. The administrator, being one administrator, you would be writing the file notings. No? And file noting is like something you're describing on the file, and that should be understood by everyone. Suppose you are writing, suppose you are writing something on the file that can only be understood by handful of the people, very intellectual one. Maybe that is a very good English, but don't you think that that is defeating the purpose? The message has not been conveyed to everyone. Administrators, they need to have a very simple English, one English that can be understood by everyone. NCRT like English, very simple English, but correct English, but correct English. No, simple, authentic, correct English should be there. And this is not what I say. If you see, no, if you see, no, if you see the UPSC syllabus, that you will find that UPSC says that they would look for a 10th standard aptitude in maths, reasoning and English. यही तो कहते हैं वो 10th standard aptitude. So 10th standard aptitude in qualifying paper of the languages as well, in CSAT as well. That is what they are looking for, and that is why 10th standard simple English that should be correct. Any other question? One question has been there in YouTube live chat. How much addition of current affairs can we do in answers? Look, first of all, one thing that is very, very good thing about history optional is that you don't have to worry much about current affairs. You don't have to much worry about current affairs because even if something has happened just recently, no, just recently, some new discoveries there, some new research there, unless that would be acceptable, unless that would be acceptable to archaeological Survey of India, that is not a theory for us to write. No, and that is how, unlike other subjects, history has got advantage that it's a very solid subject. No, and that is why you don't have to much worry about the current affairs part. You can simply write it with your convention. Suppose you are talking about something that is in news and you can use it beautifully. Use it, for example, you're talking about Lingayats. No? And suppose you're talking about Karnataka, Lingayats, another thing that was recently in news, that would add value to your answer. But certainly that has to be very simple, that would be very rare. That is there. If some current news is there, certainly I'll discuss there in the class itself. Is that simple thing? If you talk about current affairs, certainly. One more thing that you should understand here, that history would help you a lot in understanding current affairs. A lot. No? Think about it. Think about it. Like you talk about the Rohingya crisis that is there in Myanmar. Rohingya Muslims are there. The British captured Burma in three wars. Three Anglo-Burmese wars were there. And when the Anglo-Burmese wars were there, the British kept capturing the area. And when the first Anglo-Burmese war was there, in the areas like Rakhine province of Burma, the original people of that area got displaced because of war. And that was the time the British brought the Bangladeshi farmers to fill the area to get revenues out of that area. And now, when this was there, certainly the Muslim farmers from Bangladesh they settled in those areas like Rakhine province, where this problem of Rohingya Muslims that is going on. From that time onward, the original inhabitant of the area, the majority of the Myanmaris, the Buddhists, they have a deep sense of hatred against the Rohingya Muslims. And that is what is the root of the problem for the Rohingyas. That is what is the root of the problem for the Rohingya crisis. No? When the military government captured power there in 1960s, no, in Myanmar, to get the support of the people, the military government removed the citizenship status of the Rohingyas gradually in later times. No, and the Rohingya Muslims were also not they were also not accepted by the Bangladeshi government because they said that they had been living in Myanmar for generations, and that is why they would not be considered Bangladeshis. So basically, the problem with the Rohingya Muslims is that they are devoid of any type of effective citizenship. No, and without any citizenship, there is so much of the trouble for them. No amenities, no education, no water, electricity. They are going through so many problems. It's a humanitarian crisis that is going on for Rohingya. When you are good in history, understanding current affairs is just like a play. No, it's like a play. No, it is always super easy to understand the current affairs when you are very good in history as well. Now, any other doubt that you have? Then we'll go for yes. Hmm. So Gargi, Ishika, and one offline candidate, and others. Your side. I'm taking that again to talk about these questions. So those were there online. Again, they can also put some more questions in chat box. मुझे लगता है कि अब मुझे और questions की ज़रूरत पड़ने वाली है. पर अगर मैं बात करूं, one question is being asked by one offline candidate that when you're writing the answer, no, when you're writing the answer, how the answer would look very different. How the answer would look very different. My question is, no, my question is that there were so many leaders in Indian national movement, so many leaders. Why there was just one Gandhiji? What was so different about Mahatma Gandhi? He was the simplest. No, he could connect with the masses. No, simplicity is the beauty. If you are simple, you are a victor. That simple is the concept. Everybody would try to impress the examiner with the knowledge. There they deviate away from the central idea of the question. You don't have to deviate away from the central idea of the question. If you just want to write a good answer, it's very simple. Fulfill the needs of the question. Stay very simple. What they're asking, just try to answer that. Do not deviate. Suppose you have to write about Champaran Satyagraha. Do not introduce about Gandhiji. That is a deviation. Introduce about Champaran Satyagraha, not about Gandhiji. That would be a deviation. Just fulfill the demands of the question. Write very simple. Do not try to use over number of facts to impress the examiner. Conclude in a very simple way. Suppose if I say the revolt of 1857, and suppose if I conclude that it's very difficult to conclude the exact nature of the revolt of 1857. No, there's a big debate whether the revolt was just a mutiny or whether the revolt was the first war of independence. No, If you say, some of the historians like John Seeley would say it was just a mutiny, nothing more than that. But if it was just a sepoy mutiny, the question is why so many civilians they supported it. That is the question. No, if it was just a sepoy mutiny, a small sepoy mutiny, it covered the area, bigger area than the combined area of Britain and France combined together. It was just not a mutiny. That view cannot be accepted. Then V.D. Savarkar says that the 1857 revolt was the first war of independence. Again, that view cannot be accepted because to get independence, you need a nation. And modern nationalism had yet to percolate. The modern nationalism had yet to percolate to India at that time. So when India was not a nation, how to talk about independence of a nation that time? Certainly, V.D. Savarkar's view again cannot be accepted in its entirety. So there's a big debate. If I just conclude in a single line that it's very difficult to conclude the exact nature of the revolt of 1857, that itself is a conclusion. Is this not? So, times when you talk about conclusion, when you talk about introduction, very simple introduction, very simple conclusion, very simple structure, very simple language, logical, conceptual. That is the formula for UPSC. No? Then one question from Lily. Lily says that, sir, can we score 350 marks in history optional? Lily, first of all, you are there in YouTube. Some of them online, but no matter what, for whatever time we have discussed and whatever time we are discussing this 1.5, 2 hours, I'm very happy that for even 2 hours, I'm just discussing this subject with you, and just for at least for 2 hours, at least you are my candidate. I'm very happy. I would be so happy that if you break some of the records, no, at my candidate, I would be the happiest, no. And certainly, I'm so happy that if we think to do something that has not been so far been achieved by others. देखिए अभी हमने बात की थी बुद्धिज्म की, नो अभी हमने बात की थी बुद्धिज्म की for Lily and for everyone. Don't you think that one of the major factors leading to rise of Buddhism was the charisma of Buddha? No, all the conditions were same, but there was one Buddha. No, there was just one single Buddha, truly a revolutionary. 6th century BC said that there is no God. Is this not that revolutionary? He was always silent on the ideas of God. And Buddhism basically is one atheist-like philosophy. Most of the historians they would believe like that. No, don't you think that in a very traditional society, Buddha took the courage, no, to shift the focus from the study of religion to the study of society. It is not other world. We should first worry about this world and the karma in this world that would change the outcome, that would lead to nirvana. Buddha was truly a revolutionary. It was the charisma of Buddha that made Buddhism so popular. You know, the smile of Buddha was so charismatic. The eyes of Buddha, it is said that they were so charismatic. India went for the Pokhran test, no, the Pokhran nuclear test that was codenamed as Smiling Buddha. No, Smiling Buddha. Eyes of Buddha. No, the opponents of Buddha, they would say that do not look into the eyes of Buddha. Avatni Maya. You will become a follower of Buddha. No, you'll become a follower of Buddha. Truly, a person who would have this much command over the personality certainly would influence every other person. There is no doubt about this. Eventually, it was Karishma of Buddha. No, eventually, it was Karishma of Buddha that made Buddhism so popular. But Buddha is not a person, Buddha is a place. Whosoever would be as wise as Buddha would be a Buddha. That is what is the basic concept, no? If this is so for all of you, offline or live there in YouTube, I would wish for all of you that you become Buddhas. No? Many Buddhas to clear UPSC, you break new paths. No? That time Buddha was like a revolutionary. He talked about a new Renaissance. What was the Renaissance in Europe? Renaissance had changed the center of the study. Renaissance in Europe had said that no longer God should be the center of study. The humans, they should come at the center of the study. Don't you think that much before that, 6th century BC, Buddha was almost bringing a renaissance to India. That great he was. No, certainly original thinking. That is how we get marks. Now for everyone, we can score really very high. The only concern, the only requirement is that you be very original in your thinking. So go for the basic sources. In class, we are going to discuss very basic, very original, very authentic textbook like sources, and we have to derive the original thinking out of that. Using that, we can always answer all the questions, and certainly we can score really very high. Another question that we have, Ayushi Pal, thank you, you too. And Ishika says that Ishika says that in opinion like questions, do we need to go positive or negative, or we need to write balanced answer? Look, first of all, when you talk about the question tags, no, when you talk about the question tags for all of you, and it's a very important question. How to tackle question tags? Look, there are some basic question tags. First question tag is a very simple question tag. You say explain. Simple. One statement has been given, you should explain that, correct? Like, no, like if I say that, like if I say that the Gupta period was a golden period in Sanskrit literature, explain. It's simple. You just start explaining it. Kalidas, no, so many other type of writing, literature, Mrikchikatikam, Bhasha, so many things you can mention to talk about how Gupta age was a golden age. A similar question is there if I say that Gupta age is a golden period, illustrate. No, illustration. What you do, you give the examples and then you expand your answer. For example, again, you talk about Kalidas, Bhas, no, so many of the writers in Gupta time period, and you explain and you prove how Gupta age was basically a golden age in Sanskrit literature. Another question tag is elucidate. No, elucidate. Elucidate, again, you just have to explain that statement. Again, you have to explain that statement. Suppose if I say that it was the Treaty of Versailles. No, it was the Treaty of Versailles after the First World War that put the seeds for the Second World War. Elucidate. The Treaty of Versailles was very humiliating, no, very humiliating for the Germans that had put the seeds. So talk about the treaty, how it was problematic for Germany, and how it created the conditions for the rise of the Second World War, eventually under due to the aggression of Hitler. Elucidate is there when you are explaining the statement. So these are simple tags. Elucidate, explain, illustrate. Second set of question tags. When you talk about debate, you say, suppose comment. No? Suppose you are commenting on some person, you are giving your own opinion. So basically, you are giving opinion when you comment upon something. Suppose you say discuss, you start a discussion. The revolt of 1857 was the first war of independence. Discuss. Positive side and negative side, both of them. No? Then the most difficult question tag to discuss is examine or critically examine. No? Evaluate or critically evaluate. Analyze or critically analyze. All the six question tags are basically one. You cannot analyze anything without evaluating it. You cannot evaluate anything without examining it. You cannot analyze anything, no? You cannot analyze anything without being critical to it. You cannot evaluate anything without being critical to it. You cannot examine anything without being critical to it. So it's very simple. All the six question tags are one. What you have to do in the six question tags: examine or critically examine, analyze or critically analyze, evaluate or critically evaluate. All the six question tags, they are one. What you have to do, suppose you write something, no, and suppose if I give you the marks, suppose 6 out of 10. First, I have given you 6, so I'll have to talk about what positive points were there in your writing because of which I have given you 6. I have deducted 4 marks. No? So I'll have to tell what were the negative points. No? And 6 I have given. Basically, that is a conclusion. This is what is conclusion. That is all what we have to do. No, that is all we have to do. No, you have to talk about the positive point, you have to talk about the negative point, you have to talk about the conclusion. That is what is we have to do in critically examine, critically evaluate, or critically analyze. Acha, those who are there live in YouTube, offline and the online candidates, I have a question. अंतर कैसे करेंगे? How to make a difference with another question tag discuss? Because in discuss again, think about the positive and negative points. No? And again, you are giving a conclusion. Don't you think that it would be very similar to a discuss like question? No? So basically, when you talk about discuss question tag, it would be very similar to critically examine like, correct? So basically, there are just two categories of question tags in UPSC exam, linear and non-linear. बस याद रखेंगे, linear, when you do not have to generate discussion, no, like elucidate, like explain, like illustrate. You're not generating a discussion. Second type of question tags, we are generating some discussion. Comment, discuss, examine, critically examine, evaluate, critically evaluate, analyze, critical analyze. For all of them, a simple formula: positive point, negative point, a conclusion. That's all. No? And for all of this, take the views from the standard historians without even quoting the standard historians, but you can original view from the historians. You can write that in your own words. Need not keep on writing the names, but simple thing: positive point, negative point, and a conclusion. That is what you have to do. Before I end the session, before I end the session, I'll take one more query. But before that, I would like to tell you one thing, that those who are there offline, those who are there online, and those who are there live on YouTube, I'm really happy and really very appreciable because you all are very proactive. Many questions. No? हमेशा की तरह मैं एक ही बात जानता हूँ कि फौज बड़ी होने से ज़्यादा ज़रूरी है कि बहुत अच्छी हो. एंड सर्टेनली यू पीपल आर एक्सेलेंट फाइटर्स. बहुत अच्छी लड़ाई लड़नी है, यूपीएससी बहुत कमाल का एग्जाम है. नो, इट्स अ बिग एग्जाम. पर हम क्यों प्रिपेयर करें यूपीएससी के लिए? दैट इज ऑल्सो अ क्वेश्चन. द बेसिक क्वेश्चन इज दैट, look, UPSC is a very difficult exam. One last thing that I want to discuss from my side: why to prepare for UPSC? History optional, everything. And before that, before I will forget, I'll give you my mail ID that you can always use to keep sending me the queries. Correct? आप मुझे बहुत सारी अपनी queries भेजिए. I'll keep on replying that. I would be so happy to interact with you. But before that, no, I'll give you my mail ID, and then after, one last point I'll discuss with you. First, have my mail ID. I'm Gajanan Dwivedi. So GAJANANDWIVEDI at rouse is.org. That is mail ID, correct? Gajanan dot Dwivedi. I'm Gajanan Dwivedi. So GAJANAN dot DWIVEDI Dwivedi at rouse is.org. That is my mail ID. You can also find, if you want to connect with me, go to the web page of Rouse. It's very easy for you to keep on connecting with me. If you come to Rouse, I would always be so happy to talk to you. That will always be a great pleasure. One last thing that I want to discuss with you, correct? One last thing. And one last query, one more query that I would take from the online YouTube candidates. One question from Apurv. Apurv says that, can we cite scholars from the new Indic school which has refuted scholars like Ramila Thapar or Irfan Habib? First of all, if we talk about refuting Ramila Thapar and Irfan Habib, it's very difficult to refute them. No, it's very, very difficult because some of the greatest scholars, they are like Ramila Thapar, they're like Irfan Habib, and they're some of the greatest of the scholars. So it's very difficult to refute them. But suppose if there is a view, we have to quote that as well, but at the same time, we have to give the balanced view as well. So what is balanced view? We are not historians, no? And we are not planning to become historians. We are going to be a simple thing, a view that would be acceptable to most of the historians is the balanced view. See, that's simple. No, is that simple thing. So we are not here to take any sides. A view that would be acceptable to most of the historians, that would be basically a balanced view. अब एक जाते जाते मन की बात में एक छोटी सी बात आपसे पूछना चाहता हूँ, और वो बात ये है कि this year the UPSC prelims paper was slightly difficult. That is what was said. No, slightly difficult. CSAT paper was very, very difficult. That is what was said again. No, CSAT paper, they're constantly improving the difficulty level of the paper. No, so online candidates, अगर आप इस बात को मानते हैं, अगर आप इस बात को मानते हैं, then you can put something in the chat box that the CSAT was slightly more difficult, and every year its difficulty level is growing. So prelims itself was, it's slightly a difficult competition. Means again 9 papers, difficult competition, optional again very difficult to deal with. सवाल ये है, why to go for this difficulty? No, क्यों जाएं? सवाल तो ये है, why to break the head over this difficult exam like UPSC? Why not to go for a simple exam? No? Why not to make the life simpler? That is the question. नहीं, यूट्यूब वालों बच्चों को ये बात बहुत अच्छी लगी कि हाँ, कुछ सिंपल एग्जाम भी हो सकते हैं, नहीं? पर मेरा सवाल तो ये है कि भाई सिंपल एग्जाम भी जाकर जिंदगी तो बचा ही सकते थे। इतने मुश्किल एग्जाम में हम जाएं ही क्यों? इस खतरनाक लड़ाई को शुरू ही क्यों करना है? देयर आर टू आंसर्स, one is practical, one is moral. No, one is practical. I'll first take the practical side. Don't you think that what was the only problem with UPSC, that those candidates who prepared so well for the exam, and suppose 1000 posts were there, and suppose 1000 posts were there and they failed to clear it, they would be unemployed, though very talented, very scholar, very knowledgeable, unemployed. No, what was the trouble? They would be weak in maths and reasoning. That is why they would fail to clear exams. Don't you think that by making CSAT very difficult, UPSC is now prompting the candidates to improve their maths and reasoning? So that basically now if you're prepared for UPSC, you can clear any officer grade exam in India. Don't you think that UPSC has simply improved the employability of the candidates, and UPSC must be appreciated for that? No? It's a big, big thing. UPSC must be appreciated for that. By improving the maths and reasoning skills of the UPSC candidate, UPSC has now become one insurance. One candidate who would prepare for UPSC without any trouble, anyway, within 1.5 to 2 years, would become an officer like a person. No, officer grade exam, any exam, certainly you can clear. If you get UPSC, certainly within UPSC, IAS, IPS, and IFS, that would be bonus. Basically, now UPSC exam has become one insurance. Once you come to UPSC exam, you cannot fail. Everyone must prepare for UPSC. No, it's like one insurance. Preparing for such a difficult exam, anyway, you can crack so many exams. No, if you clear UPSC as well, that's a bonus. No, so UPSC is basically one insurance. This is a practical side why everyone must go for this type of exam like UPSC. The moral side, no, the moral side that is there. So Syed Ahmad Khan साहब ने एक बहुत अच्छी बात कही थी, no? So certainly there are critiques of Syed Ahmad as well. So there are some good points, there are some negative points about Syed Ahmad. Like in later part of his career, he turned against Hindu-Muslim unity. That's a negative side. But there's a positive side as well of Sir Syed Ahmad Sahab, that he contributed a lot towards education. No, Ram Mohan Roy, Sir Syed Ahmad Khan. No, we talk about Gajanan Saraswati. All of them, they contributed towards education. बट सैयद अहमद खान साहब ने एक बहुत अच्छी बात कही थी कि तालीम का मतलब होता है कि आप बेहतर इंसान बन जाते हैं. No? That education is something that would make you a better person. Don't you think that UPSC is exactly that type of education? No? By knowing so many subjects, no? By knowing so many dimensions, your ideology is so broad, so tolerant, you become much better a person. No? Much better a person you start becoming. Not only this, when you talk about preparing for UPSC, don't you think that why we have to prepare for UPSC? Because there are lakhs and lakhs of people in India without any opportunity, no, without any real equality, so called. Look, equality is there, but that is Like suppose you say right to equality. No, you talk about some fundamental rights. When आपसे फिर आपने बोला right to live, and right to live with dignity is the most fundamental right. But my question is again the same. Do you think that a dry latrine cleaner in a rural area has got a very dignified life? No. Do you think that the labor, their kids, all of them, they have got a very dignified life? Do you think that all those who are there, no, selling the product, the small kids on, they are getting very dignified life, a very good life? They also have the right. No. When you talk about India being a superpower, it would be. But when we all are part of this superpower India, so the task is humongous. The task is so huge. The moral side of UPSC is that difficult exam. The best should serve the nation. जो सबसे बेहतर होगा वो बनना चाहिए administrator. So it's a fight that is going on. You have to prove that you are the best, no? And only the best of the administrator should serve the nation. There are lakhs of people and they have to be uplifted. So it's nation building. When you're preparing for UPSC, it's a moral side. You are contributing to nationalism. It's all nationalism. At this stage, dharma is to study well, to fight well, no, against every problem, poverty, no, the education that is not there with so many people, malnutrition, everything is a problem. You fight against that. That is why prepare well for the exam. बहुत कमाल का prepare करिए. I always say result is always secondary. The fight must be glorious. And you have to prove that you are the best to serve the nation. So welcome to this nation building overall exercise. Go for the best exam. Prove that you are the best. बहुत अच्छे से पढ़िए. Thank you so much for being part of this seminar. I wish you good luck. And certainly, you have my mail ID. You can go to the web page of Rouse again to connect with me. You can come to Rouse, keep connecting, keep sending your doubts. Thank you so much, all of you. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. Wish you good luck. God bless. Thank you so much.